people, it's me, Anja. My pronouns are she and her, and welcome back to my channel for a new recent reads video. The first book on this list is called The Last Bear. This book is a middle-grade contemporary and it follows a young girl who befriends a polar bear. This book was so good. I ended up rating it 4 stars because I really enjoyed it. This story was so wonderful and so whimsical and just so magical, and it was just so well done. First of all, the plot was so intriguing and it was just so thrilling, and I was just so invested in the story every single page. The main character is such a wonderful, well-developed, distinct main character that you can't help but just fall in love with. This book is literally so good. It's just so wonderful. The world building was so well done and it was so immersive. This book was so good. It's absolutely so incredible. It's so amazing, and this book deserves all of its hype and so much more. So with that said, I rated it 4 stars and I would highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called House of Sage and Sorrow. For those who don't know, this is the sequel to A Spark of White Fire, which I talked about in my last recent reads video. So this book is the second book in this trilogy, and I really enjoyed this one as well. I ended up rating it 4 stars because I just really enjoyed it. As per the first book, the plot was so fast-paced and it was so intriguing and it was so well done. The world building was so immersive and it was so inventive, and I just found myself being so emotionally invested in everything that was happening. This book is literally so good. I really enjoyed how the author raised the stakes with her plot twist while still maintaining the same emotionally connectable characters that she had created and introduced in the first book. Basically, this book was a really strong, solid sequel, and I ended up rating it 4 stars because I really enjoyed it. So with that, I would highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called A War of Swallowed Stars. This book is the 3rd book in this trilogy, and frankly, this one is the worst of the trilogy, and I ended up rating it 3 stars, and honestly, I kind of regret finishing it, because I just didn't enjoy this book as much as the first 2. Because, first of all, the amount of multiple perspectives in this book kind of dragged the story down instead of amplifying it. I think that if you're going to have multiple perspectives in a series, you should have the same amount of multiple perspectives in each book. The first book in this trilogy had 1 perspective. The second book had 2, and this one had about 5 or something like that. And I just wasn't emotionally connected to all of these characters, so that's why I kind of felt like the multiple perspectives kind of dragged the story down. However, with that said, the plot of the story felt like it really accelerated and got so much faster, and it didn't really give me time to be emotionally invested in the characters that I used to be emotionally connected in, or in any of the new characters that I was suddenly being more introduced to. So with that said, even though the world building was immersive, and like I said, the plot was very action-packed and very fast-paced, I just didn't enjoy this book as much as the previous 2 books. So with that said, this book is the worst in the trilogy, and the first book in this trilogy was definitely the best. So I ended up rating this book 3 stars, and honestly, I don't really recommend it. So there's that. The next book on this list is called Sparrow Rising. This book is a middle-grade fantasy, and it's set in a world where everybody has wings, and it follows 2 characters, one of them who dreams of proving herself worthy against a strict hierarchy, and another character who challenges those dreams. This book is absolutely so fantastic. I had really high expectations for this book because this author wrote the Mistwick School of Music Craft last year, and I really enjoyed that. So I was kind of afraid that this book wouldn't live up to those expectations, but it absolutely did. This book is so good. First of all, the world building was so inventive, and it was so immersive, and it was so well done. Second of all, the plot was so intriguing, and it was so fast-paced. Third of all, both of the main characters were both well-developed and distinct, and I really enjoyed their friendship, and I'm so excited to learn more about them in the sequel, because I will definitely be reading the sequel, because this book was literally so good, and it deserves all of its hype and so much more. This book is literally so good. This author is literally so talented. Like I said, I will be reading the sequel when it comes out next year, and I would highly recommend this book, because I ended up rating it 4 stars because I really enjoyed it. The last book on this list, but certainly not the least, is called Suns Will Rise. For those who don't know, this is the 3rd and final book in the System Divine trilogy, and this trilogy is a YA science fiction retelling of Les Mis. I had really high expectations for this book, because this book was one of my most anticipated 2021 new releases, and I will say that this book definitely lived up to those expectations, because I ended up rating it 4 stars, because it was so good. First of all, the plot was so intriguing, and it was so thrilling, because it was so action-packed, it was so fast-paced, and I had no idea what to expect, because I had no idea what to expect from anything. Like, this book is literally so good. The world building was so immersive, and it was so inventive, and it was so well done. All of the characters were so well developed and so distinct. The romances were well developed as well. This book is literally so good. Like I said, I ended up rating it 4 stars, and I would highly recommend it. This trilogy is so underrated, and it deserves so much more hype. So with that said, I highly recommend it. So, in conclusion, by default, my least favorite book on this list was A War of Swallowed Stars, because that's the only one on this list that I ended up rating 3 stars. Out of all the other books, which I rated 4 stars, my favorite book was probably The Last Bear. So, with that said, if you enjoyed this video, please don't hesitate to give it a big thumbs up, donate to Palestine, comment down below the peacock emoji if you made it all the way to the end of the video. Thanks for watching, subscribe to my channel if you're new, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!